Yes.
Okay. Before I ask my question, I'm going to speak in Spanish, so whoever doesn't speak Spanish, disculpe. Pero tengo mucho placer para estar aquí contigo.
Gracias.
Gracias. And my question, okay, back to English, is that, like, for many instances, especially with Black women, you know, the arts has been an outlet to express themselves in areas that aren't able to, you know, they aren't able to do it conventionally. So how do you think, especially in 2014, you know, there's still a lot of injustices happening with Black women, like, how do you think arts will continue to move forward in order to be an outlet of expression?
Let me tell you the interesting question too, because there are things that never stop. They can improve, they can change a little bit, but we have to study, we have to reflect about the fact of body of someone. When I was a teenager, it was very, very important for us. We were under a dictatorship, and there was a Latin term, habeas corpus, which is very famous in law. Whenever you you have a friend, whatever, who studies law, that's a very important term, habeas corpus. So a human being has the right to be free because it has a body. Because in Latin, habeas corpus means I have a body. So there have been a diversity of theories about bodies. The body of a woman, there are films, very interesting film. I cannot recall the name of an American film dedicated to the Black women and slavery and everything. The body of a domestic slave, which everybody talks about. You know, in the mainstream literature for slavery, we have bunches of chapters and lines on the fields and the industries, or I don't know, but it's so interesting to find, you know, a domestic slave who is someone that has to confront every day, in everyday life, different values, especially in his body or her body, because from the moment he says domestic slave, it was, you know, like someone off record, which was not. It was another dimension of slavery, and we have to study that. So the point, if you take, for instance, there is a Turkish film around 15 years old, 20, very interesting, called Yol, Y-O-L. It's a story of a family. I don't know if you have seen that, because in the Western world, the struggle for, you know, equality with women and so forth, it's very outstanding, very important. But if we take a look to the role and the story of women in other countries, okay, you're going to find hallucinations. And we have to know that from the perspective of a Western person. So in this film, it's a story of a man and a woman. They live in Shara, very poorly. They work in the fields, you know. And suddenly there is a catastrophe from the weather. I mean, suddenly they have a storm, a terrible storm. So the guy had a very special relationship with his horse. At some point, they are in a great crisis. They have to survive. And the man, he chooses his horse. That's the end of the film. He leaves, he abandoned his wife under the snow, and he prefers his horse, which was much more important because it was a horse who gave him a living, for making a living, you know. So it's a metaphor, you know. It's like sometimes I use the very utopic references for make understand the reader. But those metaphors come from a very bitter history, a very bitter, in terms of the relationship between men and women and our bodies. This is very important. I don't feel that I am myself a feminist, but I do trust the fact that we need to teach, to communicate these experiences, just to tell new people, young people, that they have to change and that we have to change many, many perspectives which are around. You cannot but treat anyone, no one, because of his or her sex or her gender or her politics or whatever, or her geography, because they come from the ocean or they come from rivers, or that's very, very important. And I think that the female issue in our times is very rich in that sense, not only as a social factor, civil factor, but as calling people to reflect and come over and to remove prejudices.
En más en nuestros países.
Que tenemos una cultura
machista.
machista.
Tú sabes, especialmente, I'm going to translate it, como cuando en nuestros países, como muchas personas piensan que solamente si eres latino parecen como mí y puedes, olvidar todos otros raíces que ha llegado de Latinoamérica. I mentioned to her, it's especially a big problem in Latin America because there is a big anti-blackness around Latin America, and that, with the stereotypes that anyone who looks Latino might look like me, but not
like me,
her or like anyone, and that it's like a big problem, and something that and my friends and I have been mentioning for like a lot of time, like a long time now.
It's interesting. So we have to, keep on doing things, writing poems, painting, in many ways, and I believe I trust art. Art is a wonderful way, but art should be respected. You have to have a craft, you have to have a technique. If you draw bad, no message in your painting, okay? If you write bad, no message in your writing. You should, you have to have a training, you have to do things, you have to go to school, you have to go to college if possible, you have to train yourself, okay, in order to become a better person.